Kubo and the two-string style opening credits with origami logos.
Pay careful attention to everything you see and hear.
Maybe the payoff to the pay attention or you'll miss it isn't spectacular, but the opening shot of the movie is the Moon King, while the main threat is a giant wave, and if our moon controls our tides, a Moon King could definitely make a giant tidal wave. And then once Mother splits the wave to reveal the mountain, the moon actually moves to get out from behind the clouds, which is why the second wave sneaks up on her. Also, speaking of not looking away, you're not going to want to because you'll miss a whole crap ton of beautiful details on display, from the bioluminescence in the giant wave to the moon glowing through the water. The pace and artistic language used in this movie are so much more esoteric than a typical kids movie. It takes its time, letting Kubo collect the scattered papers that he seems to treat as unremarkable, cutting to his stack and then quickly to lighting a fire to cook food. Each transition is clean, precisely timed, and the final roar of the fire sound effect cut to boiling water is superb. Time passage is conveyed without wasting any, and we still get the feeling that Kubo's routine is fairly rote, and even if he excels at it, we're also reminded that he's a kid as he burns his hand. This is the level this movie operates at. And to further illustrate our dynamic, the excitement on Kubo's face to try to engage his mother with his origami dwindling as she tacitly confirms she's not there. As we again promptly travel along with Kubo, the beauty of this world starts to reveal itself. The pinkly lit mountains, the neat and small but halcyon village, the golden field, all scored by Dario Marianelli in a calm but significant way. And yeah, that's a CinemaWins Word of the Week.
I got 2 pennies and a lint ball. This is pretty good lint.
Optimism. The correct way to hold the Japanese pick, called a bachi, is like this with the pinky finger behind. It's a quick shot, but I believe this is a sign of Kubo's inexperience, simply that his hands aren't big or strong enough yet to hold it correctly. Why don't we just do a brief catch-up on some amazing details, like Kubo's red bachi holding thumb, the dirt on the fishmonger's hand, the dragon's delayed attention, basket weaving. I guess it's time to mention that this entire movie is stop motion and everything you're seeing is effectively real, except for some green screen backdrops occasionally. Yeah. And then the movie confirms the cold open wasn't just a story. Magic is real and these people are all together cool with it. What was I saying about the insane amount of detail? Like the lifelike paper samurai being meticulously highlighted by the stark lighting?
The only weapon in the whole world that could protect him from the power.
I can't confirm Kubo Shamisen playing is accurate like I could with Coco's guitar skills, but as nothing more than a backdrop to magic origami, it's super fun to listen to and watch. Artistic extermination, and I'm super stoked that the giant spider was not foreshadowing and stayed relegated to paper. And a magical origami storytelling montage filled with paper comedy, paper gore, and paper terror is the fastest way to see this villager's true colors.
To shreds, you say?
Oh my!
Should be comfortable with slashing swords by now, Sulu. Realism. There have already been a few, but this is my current favorite reflection in an eye because it's so ancillary. You wouldn't even notice it if you weren't looking, but it builds the world.
People like an ending.
They do, but in case you haven't noticed, villager, this is like the storyboard for the entire movie, and Kubo doesn't know how his story ends yet, just like he doesn't know how his father's story ended. But it's the reason the film and Kubo's story open with the same narration. So we know Mother has some form of brain damage, landing her somewhere between moments of dementia and just totally catatonic. At first I thought, so is this like reverse sundowning? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything she does is to protect Kubo. And it's at least hinted at later that she has some level of control over her mental state, which is believable since she's supernatural. So if she could choose when to wake up, it would be after sunset when Kubo is in the most danger. Did she convert her capsized boat into a bookshelf? Resourcefulness?
Always stay hidden from the night sky or they will find you and they'll take you away from me. You will never let this happen. Promise me, Kubo.
There's a lot of it going around. This movie deals with the death of innocence quite a bit, and every time it comes up, the kid dealing with things far beyond his years look is captured masterfully. And then added to that, the weight of the real reason Kubo has to stack paper in the morning. It's not the wind, it's his out-of-control magical mother. I love that they create characters simply through the amount of movement in their face. Kubo's face has been pretty stoic so far, but the old woman's face contorts all around the world. The framing of this shot and the way it encourages you to glance at the woman sweeping or man pulling a cart in the background. There's never not something going on back there. Another stellar example of taking their time but not wasting hours. Each transition around a tree creates a sense of distance from Kubo and movement towards something far away.
I know you're dead, but I hope everything is okay.
Well wishes.
She says you were a great leader who died protecting me, saving one of my eyes. 2 would have been ideal, but thanks anyway.
And honesty. Yeah, sometimes you just have to win the astonishing beauty.
Face to face.
Can't say there's a better cast for creepy twin sisters than Rooney Mara. Not because she's creepy, but because she can be and has been pretty much whatever she wanted. Rooney Mara is always a win. Attacking innocent villagers? The man in black never did have any scruples. Mother to the rescue!
Your mother is gone. Your village is destroyed, burned to the ground.
Remember that death of innocence thing? Yeah, it starts getting murdered here.
Your mother used the last of her magic to save you and bring me to life.
Which is an alright explanation as to why Monkey sounds exactly like Mother, you'd think Kubo would ask. But also, if Monkey wasn't his mother and she just sounded like his mother, that would be one of the cruelest spells ever. And let's just take a moment to acknowledge the best facial expressions in the movie. They all come from Monkey.
You don't recognize me. And if we're not prepared, they'll kill me and take your other eye.
Harsh, but also the way Charlize has dropped the pitch of her voice and sharpened her consonants to be the hard-knock Monkey is a reminder that Charlize Theron is always a win. Monkey carries the scar from the Charm version, which is actually in the opposite eye as Mother, like she's looking in a mirror. Monkey's first smile of the movie, directed at Kubo sleeping, a quick hint to those who couldn't pick Charlize's voice off a ham radio.
He's been standing there for hours, quietly judging us.
As magical origami is wont to do.
I'm not even convinced this counts as origami. I could swear scissors were involved.
Impossible origami? Consider yourself lampshaded. And no matter how dire it gets, there's always a good balance of a little whimsy to keep things light.
Life has a funny way of keeping things balanced.
See? Yeah, you can fly.
Do you ever say anything encouraging?
I encourage you not to die.
Encouragement.
Any moment, something terrible could come out of nowhere, and
Clairvoyance.
I still think I'm gonna stab him.
And preparedness. Hug and never mind.
I will join you, and I will give my life for you if necessary.
About that. Okay, Beetle gets a funny face win too.
I am certain I could be helpful. Indispensable.
Sword indestructible, helmet invulnerable, breastplate impenetrable, beetle indispensable? You sure the crest shouldn't be a fox? I mean, come on, Monkey, even you pointed this out. Good old practical motion blur.
Don't touch anything.
He did it.
So it's an only the lamp situation. But this time it wasn't the monkey's fault.
No. Yes.
You know how I do that thing? Jennifer Goodwin equals Bunny, David Hyde Pierce equals Alien Dog, Ryan Reynolds equals Pikachu, well, Deadpool. But oddly enough, Matthew McConaughey equals Amnesiac Samurai Beetle, and you can't convince me otherwise. He's a fine koala too. And now we get to the biggest puppet Laika has ever created. Yeah, it's big.
I've got a bone to pick with you. See, because he's made of bone.
You can fly?
Apparently, yes!
That's a cliche dodge, or maybe an expectation subversion? But just because you can fly doesn't mean you know how to. Saving your master's son, actually your son, even if you don't know.
You're being nice to me.
Don't tell anyone.
The mere fact that given enough time, these two would fall in love again because they're destined to be together. They've even got the parent lingo down.
Are you two going to fight again?
Of course not. We're having a grown-up conversation.
And this time, Monkey can't even contain her pride and delight in her son's talent. And why should she? They used 250,000 leaves and it took 16 real-life human master artisans of varying disciplines 4 months to create the ship.
Okay, now you two are being weird.
Yeah, flirting. Humble brag followed by a win. Jude eats sushi and sashimi but calls it sumi, and it's the best thing ever. And the artists even got the marbling and the salmon to look realistic. Also master sushi chef skills. Sushi chef skills. Sushi chef skills. You try it.
You act like you've never had a meal sitting between a monkey and a beetle before.
I've never had a meal sitting between anyone before.
There's subtext here of Kubo getting a new family after never having a father and then losing his mother. The value of this new family can't be understated, to the point that it doesn't matter that they're his biological parents. This is still sweet regardless.
Before you went on this great adventure, you were still very much a hero.
And the questions Kubo asked his mother in the beginning about Hanzo are now being answered before Kubo's eyes, even if he doesn't know it. This is who his father is. And the second biggest puppet model Laika ever created. And for me, the size of these eyes are far more unnerving than the skeleton. Look at that pupil dilation.
And betrayed our father!
It's not always the most action-packed, but when we get to a fight scene, the choreography is fun and fast-paced while still being easy to follow, with each section feeling deliberate. And even when no swords are clashing, it's a visual treat. Is that Boba Fett's Odyssey?
I looked up to her. She was so strong, and love made her weak. It made me stronger.
I don't think I'll ever get tired of that message.
My son.
90% of you already knew, but it still hits you in the soft spot watching Kubo find out and Monkey acknowledge it.
My sisters and I went to the Temple of Bones to kill Hanzo.
A good reason for her to have blocked that memory, because it would have been a lot when the threat to Kubo's life was minimal.
He looked into my eyes and uttered 4 simple words.
I love you. Monkey?
You are my quest.
What a cliche dodge. There are a million ways to read that as problematic. The people you love aren't a challenge to overcome or a prize to be won. And it would be easy to read it that way coming from the guy who fell into love because he devoted his life to finding magical armor. But here's my read. Julia is my quest. My hero's journey is loving her and giving her the most fulfilling life I can. And now that extends to my son Jude, so when Hanzo says, "You are my quest," he phrases it that way because he's abandoning his prize quest for her. Lo-fi origami scene for the win.
I will do everything I can to keep him from harm.
Thank you, Beetle.
Oof, that musical swell to match Beetle's declaration to protect Kubo. Smart of grandfather to create an origami dream world for Kubo to relate to and manipulate him. And everything is paper, from the water to the fortress to the waterfall. Was Hanzo just trying to warn Kubo? He's known where all the other items were, so it would make sense he knows this is a trap. Another sick transition to a new camera angle. Is that a super villain landing? Is that a thing? If I already asked that question.
Father.
My son,
At least Kubo knows now why his father didn't respond to him in the graveyard.
you are my quest.
I can't imagine anything making me cry more than... Oh, come on. Jokes aside, even these mere seconds are enough time for Monkey to realize she was right in choosing Hanzo over her immortal family. Without even knowing his own identity, he devoted himself to Monkey and his son Kubo. That's everything right there. Well, now, there's a transition. The sisters are gone, Monkey and Beetle are gone, all that's left is Kubo and the Moon King.
Hate and heartache and suffering and death.
Voldemort has always had some whack ideas about Muggles, but his little speech here is vital because Kubo has not had an easy life. It would be easy to miss because he doesn't complain about it, it's just part of who he is, but his talent for origami and storytelling is his job. Kubo's a street performer working for tips so he and his mother don't starve. He's also missing a dad and an eye right from the get, and, well, you know where we are now.
And how does this story end?
I kill you.
This typical hero declaration moment doesn't quite have the same triumph. There's something off about those words coming out of soft-hearted Kubo, and I'd say that's deliberate. Ha! That's what you get when you mess with Sword Uncomfortable. You lose a hand. Oh, tail hand. He's got a tail hand. Evidence that the Moon King's monster form was just as he said.
To battle with a hideous monster who ruined your life.
Just Kubo's fantastical story ending the way he thought it should end. His wounds don't seem like wounds, they just look like moonlight. His pupil and wounded eye look the same, meaning there was no way Kubo could actually defeat him with only a sword. Also, the moonlight glow he emits.
It's in my memories. The most powerful kind of magic there is.
And I'll get into it more in the conclusion, but Kubo chooses love rather than hate, defense rather than offense. Even his final blow is merciful. Kubo's resolve, now that he finally accepts the power of his family, is moving. Oops, spoke too soon on favorite reflection. The Moon King, with his moon power gone, reveals our first crescent moon in the movie reflected in his human eye. Good stuff. And we know why Kubo gave him a functioning eye.
I know why you want my eye. Because without it, I can't look into the eyes of another and see their soul.
Because even after all the truth the Moon King spits at Kubo, seeing another soul makes it all worth it.
You are the kindest, sweetest man.
Again, more in the conclusion, but mercy from the villagers whose homes were burned by this dude. My seeing a little Yojimbo and Hanzo. Kurosawa is present, so it makes sense. Yep, director confirmed he's based on Toshido Mifune. And this might not be the happy ending you were hoping for. One of the harder swallows is the mere seconds Monkey and Beetle had together once they learned the truth. But keep in mind that in this universe, they are together in their true forms in the afterlife, so it actually is a happy ending for them. Well, there's a good way of honoring all the characters she played. Look, George Harrison's voice is beautiful, but Regina Spektor injects a haunting softness into the Beatles song that wraps up the emotions of this movie. And fun fact, Travis listened to a lot of Regina while creating this film, so it worked out that she agreed to sing. Did I do it? Am I safe? And each section of 2D credits corresponds nicely to the crew that's being mentioned. Drums for music, huge wave for VFX, traditional Japanese garments for costuming. They could have recorded it as while my Shamisen gently weeps, but hey, this is fine. See, I'm not crazy. Even Travis Knight agrees. So, I haven't done any Laika films, and about halfway through this one, it occurred to me that Coraline and Paranorman have been widely requested by you. And I love both. I'll get to them. But the moment I saw the first trailer for Kubo, I fell in love. It's been on my schedule since the Blu-ray came out. I just kept moving it back for one reason or another, but I couldn't wait any longer. Even though roughly 85% of my audience will not watch this, oh well. Laika isn't your run-of-the-mill kids animation studio. Each film is on its own unique level of detail, care, and just straight-up hard work. Their films are set apart because your eyes and your brain know that you're watching objects that exist in the real world. No matter how close digital animation gets to photorealism, there will always be a part of us that knows you can't touch it. The stop-motion twitchiness and imperfections are like a warm blanket to your senses. Learning that they use Tyvek wrap for the origami, you know, this Tyvek, because years of stop motion on normal paper would have been impossible. All the snow is practical, made of salt, shredded styrofoam, and paraffin wax, so each footprint had to be created by hand, even for Mini Hanzo. And I already talked about the 11-foot tall, almost 3-foot wide eyeballs and the 16-foot tall, 400-pound skeleton. Laika doesn't mess around. There's also the tiny decisions made by the animators and artists and puppet makers throughout, like Monkey fixing her hair, the sun being the sigil of the armor, you know, the opposite of the moon. Beetle and Hanzo often having synchronous movements, or just that Hanzo seems to be drawn to his real-life Kafka self. Kafkaed self. Kafkaesque. Nope. How often the helmet invulnerable Belle is shown in the first act, legitimately while Kubo is telling us to pay attention. And let's not ignore the oversaturated, ever-changing color palette and stunning backdrops it's used on. The film is beautiful from wide to close up. One of the other defining factors for Laika is that they make kids movies that border on not kids movies. I was so confused by what I was watching the first time I saw Coraline, I thought I'd stumbled onto some weird horror labor of love accidentally. But it's a theme for the studio that they don't pull punches. Clearly, the same can be said here. The sisters curdle your blood, Kubo's mom dies twice, and moments after learning the truth about his father, he dies. I got lucky that 2.5-year-old Jude got bored after the second prolonged sunset shot because I hadn't thought it through yet. And because I have a cynical underbelly I rarely let show on this channel, one of the first things that popped into my head watching this was, oh man, are Laika animators as underpaid as the rest of the industry? And based on what I've found, no one can be totally sure, but it seems like they aren't. According to a few reports I read, the average base salary is 6 figures, so I hope that's true. They definitely earn every penny, and since they're in-house rather than a subcontractor, I have to assume they're treated much better. On to Kubo and the 2 strings. I know that some people are confused because a Shamisen has 3 strings. They tried to spell it out with his mother's strand of hair and his father's bowstring being his first 2 replacements on the Shamisen and Kubo's hair being the 3rd. The title of the movie could actually be The 3 Strings or Kubo and Monkey and Beetle. Kubo is also a string, but his parents are his 2 strings. The 2 strings keeping him tethered to this world, the 2 memory strings in his mind he used to keep them alive. You could also go down a whole Buddhist path with yin and yang or general duality. There are a few ways to read this movie. And speaking of metaphor and allegory and all things not literal, you could probably spend hours deciphering the layers because when the moon is the bad guy, everything takes on meaning. Close-ups on the sun protecting Kubo when he's doing his origami magic show, an act that would otherwise absolutely draw the attention of the Moon King, but he can't see Kubo. I mentioned earlier that Mother only wakes up during the night because it's the time she most needs to protect Kubo, but it could also simply be because it's when her supernatural power is the strongest as a daughter of the Moon King. The entire movie can be looked at as a literal coming-of-age story, giving us a fantastical story about leaving your parents as you enter adulthood. Honestly, the funniest bit of metaphor in this movie is that the quest for the armor, well, yeah, the sword was useful. The actual MacGuffins weren't the adjective armors, they were the friends they made along the way. Well, family. Each trial's reward was a leap forward in Kubo's development. Learning to work together with Monkey and Beetle, opening up about his struggle to see his mother's true self through her illness, then realizing Monkey was his mother, and then by the time he gets the helmet, he actually learns the value of family himself. That the armor was inside him all along. I'm joking, but I mean, it was the Shamisen, and the Shamisen represents his mother and the power of her love for him. And he strung it with her hair, his father's bowstring, and his own hair. He explicitly used family as his final weapon against the Moon King. I'm not bringing up these jokey cliches to mock the film. The point is that when used correctly, these messages work. There's a reason they're resonant and timeless, and on top of the framework of a Japanese fable, they work really, really well. I always mention when a movie leaves me unsettled. Sometimes it's worse than others, sometimes it will ruin the movie for me. See Glass. Other times it's so hardwired into the narrative it elevates the movie. See Requiem for a Dream. Actually, don't see that unless you know what you're getting yourself into. But the point is that Kubo sort of left me somewhere in the middle at first. It was clear from the beginning that loss would play a large part in the film, and after my first viewing, I felt like I'd lost something. The ending felt a bit empty. On my second time through, knowing that the point was to not sugarcoat loss, but instead to portray ways real people deal with loss and death, I left less empty? Even still, it's not as neat and tidy as your typical kid's movie. Loss and death are central to everything, and even though we end on a shot of Kubo with his parents, they are gone from the physical world, as Kubo says.
All stories have an end.
But what is more important is what Monkey says to Kubo early on.
And memories are powerful things, Kubo.
Beetle reiterates it.
Your story will never end. Your story will live on in him.
And then Kubo uses it as his final shield against the Moon King.
It's in my memories, the most powerful kind of magic there is.
So while some may walk away thinking the message is muddled, it's deliberately both. Stories end and memories keep us alive. And the fantastic thing about Laika, Kubo in particular, is that you can walk away with all that subtext and metaphor rattling around in your brain, or just one piece that resonated with you. Maybe the loss of a parent at an early age allowed you to connect with Kubo's struggle and be moved by his sorrow and even take the importance of memories to heart. Or even more surface level, it can be a story of light triumphing over dark without violence. And not because Kubo didn't possess the power to destroy the Moon King, but because love, forgiveness, and compassion were what Kubo chose for his grandfather in spite of everything that had happened. Replacing his memory isn't a trick or a cruel punishment, it's a gift that the Moon King neither wanted nor deserved. A gift that wouldn't have been easy for Kubo to give, even considering his mother's words.
He doesn't hate you. He wants to make you just like him.
Grandfather's motivations weren't pure evil, but our final not neat and tidy theme is that anger and love can coexist. Sorrow and compassion for the one who caused you sorrow is not impossible. And sometimes it takes your family and those friends you accept as family to help you through it. That was his gift to his grandfather. A second chance, a clean slate, a new family. You could probably tell that I really, really love this movie.
If I'm Beetle and you're Monkey, why isn't he called Boy?
Sadly, a lot of us miss this in theaters for one reason or another. I'm glad to see this relative flop wasn't a huge setback for Laika. Next time I'm going to try to be on top of 60-second reviews for movies like this because we need these films. And Laika seems to be the closest to filling the huge hole left by Studio Ghibli. Movies made for kids that allow the ugliness of our world in while delighting their senses at the same time. And movies made for adults that challenge your preconceptions and remind you what love of your craft really looks like. I barely talked about the cast, but thank you Charlize Theron, Art Parkinson, Ralph Fiennes, Matthew McConaughey, Rooney Mara, George Takei, even though you should have a bigger part. But thank you Travis Knight for putting something so personal into a film. Next week, a relevant movie to one coming to theaters.
If you must blink, do it now. If you must blink, do it now.
I actually don't think I even can blink. Do I have eyelids?